Welcome to tonight's How To Academy for people in the UK. It's a bank holiday Monday. For people other places, it's probably not. We're going to be talking about one of my favourite subjects. I'm Robin Ince, by the way. I do quite a few of these, and it is a subject that I love. It's a subject which I've never done a conversation with anyone where we've ever normally managed to get to point number 2, because it's the human brain and examining the human brain. As human brains are they go off on many tangents, and it's Jill Bolte Taylor who has written this fantastic, her first book, My Stroke of Insight, which many of you I'm sure will know about, is all about her experience as a neuroanatomist, watching different parts of her brain shut down as she experienced an aneurysm, a stroke, and that is an amazing book. And her new book takes more lessons from that and looks at the different sections of our brain and what they seem to sometimes benevolently give us, and also at the same time sometimes the way that they can hold us back, and the way that we can try and bring all those things together to work out how our feuding brain can bring some kind of delight into our life. And this is Whole Brain Living, which is out now. Good evening, Jill.
Good evening, Robin. I'm so excited to be with you. Thank you.
I'm going to get straight in there, because this is, as someone, I know you've always been fascinated in the brain. And one thing that I found very often asking anyone who's involved in neuroscience about the first real shocking moment that they had as they learned about the human brain was that realizing what a knife edge it is on. Now, you obviously have actually experienced seeing that the brain beginning to cease to work. But when did you first become aware of just how precarious something as complex as the human brain and its activity is?
So I think that for me, I had already taken anatomy. And so I had learned about the autonomic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system has chain ganglia running all the way down the vertebral walls. And the first time I ever saw that in a cadaver, I was blown away. And it's like, wow, it's real and it's amazing and it's right there and it works. Boom. And it's like, I was blown away. And yeah, I remember that moment.
So what do you think would surprise people most? Well, I mean, I should mention, just before we went on air, you actually said, I like them dead. And in terms of, they're not reactive, you can get the brain out, you can look at it. For everyone watching this, obviously, inside their skull, they have this active brain and this curiosity. Yeah. What do you think would surprise people most if they actually saw a human brain up close?
I think just recognizing that it's this organic, vulnerable collection of cells. And, you know, you put your finger in it and it goes right into it. And it's like, okay, well, there's a lesion. That would be a problem. I mean, how fragile it is. I think that would really make an impression on people about how vulnerable this brain is. And then, you know, we just abuse the heck out of it as people. But if you just look at the organ and hold the organ, it's really very awe-inspiring in its fragility.
Because one of the things that I feel that two things which would really help change human beings for the better is, one is to be able to see the Earth from space, because I think anyone I've spoken to about that, the experience of seeing the fragility of that. I've been fortunate enough to have a couple of brain scans, and I remember that first time at about the age of 40 of seeing this journey through my brain. It was just remarkable to go, that's my world. That's where I am. That is all the trauma. That is all the joy.
And and you're being very prayerful that whoever's with you taking you on that journey doesn't say, oh no, let's go back and look at that last one. That doesn't belong there. You know,
well, that was the thing that used to scare me most. Was I used to show it in I ended up doing a live touring show, and I showed my brain at one point, and every night I expected to walk into the bar and someone go, excuse me, I'm a neuroscientist, I think they missed something. I just need to tell you about one of your folds that shouldn't be as folded as it is. But I imagine you had, you know, but before your stroke, just in terms of in the work that you were doing, you must have had a chance to look at your own brain.
Oh, yes. Yes. So when I was at Harvard, the fellow who I was working with, we were trying to find, when you think about vision is in the back of the brain. Of course, this is a model. And in the back of the brain, it would fit like this, is the occipital region. And vision comes in as dots, just dots, and that would be area vision 1. And then from the dots, it gets sent to visual 2, which is the lines and these lines in between. And so, and then you go to area 3 and you get color, you go to, or 3D, you go to 4, you get color, or I don't remember which one's which, but area 5 tracks targets through moving space. And that's what we were doing. We were trying to find in the human brain, because they knew where it was in the monkey brain, but where in the human brain is area V5, the ability to track a moving target through space. So I would actually, when I was at Harvard, I'd take my little bucket on the T and I'd go down to Mass General, and they would donate tissue to me by people who said that they could. And then I'd be on the T, coming back with my bucket, just smiling, knowing I'm so glad these people don't know what I have in my bucket, because it looks like a little igloo cooler. They thought I had my lunch. So yes, I've been around fresh tissue a lot.
Now, I would, in terms of just your biography as well, it's very interesting. You've written in both your books about your older brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and that had a tremendous influence on the way that you've taken your career.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. He was 18 months older than I was. So everywhere we went together, as kids do. They do everything together. And I would notice, I'm going to say as early as age 4, I started realizing that we would have the same experience, but he would interpret it differently than I would. For example, if we were playing too close to the street, my mom Gigi might come running out screaming, and he thought she was angry, and I thought she was freaking out because we were going to get hurt. So the way we interpreted the world was very different. And it became clear to me that we were different from one another. And of course, I had no idea which one of us was normal. So part of my fascination with anatomy was trying to learn what is normal. But in our society, in order to study normal, we don't really study normal. We study disease compared to what would be diagnosed as normal. But what's normal? You got a bell curve, and we all fit in that 70% with 15% out on each side. We're a pretty weird human being, so what is normal? So that became my fascination from really my childhood.
See, that's one of in terms of reading something about some of the work on schizophrenia, it's to see so many things which eventually become what we see as problems of human brain activity, take us to then these strange, the ability to hear our voices in our head is a tremendous evolutionary advantage. But it only has to go a little bit further one way or the other, and it becomes something that will plague us and possibly destroy us. And I find that kind of keys to heaven also open the gates to hell element of the complexity of the human brain is utterly fascinating, and again, sometimes deeply worrying.
It is. And you've got to remember that every ability we have, whether we're normal or not normal, whether if we have a hallucination ability, if we hear voices and those voices are hostile to us or helpful to us, or we have a delusional thinking system, every ability that we are exhibiting, no matter where we fall on that spectrum of normality, is because we have cells that are wired together to perform that function. So somehow or another, my brother's brain, he's the closest thing to me that exists in the universe compared to a biologically speaking. So why is it his brain creates hallucination and he lives in a delusional thinking system that is his reality? I could not talk him out of his reality any more than you could talk me out of my reality. So, but it's the cells, and which cells are communicating with which cells, with which chemicals, and then in what quantities of those chemicals. And we're all a bit different.
I find it so fascinating, the Julian Jaynes work on the bicameral mind.
Origin of Consciousness. That was a great. My dad gave me that book when I was in my 20s, and it really set me on that path.
I actually that is, by the way, everyone watching, if you've not read Julian Jaynes's work, people might not agree with it, but it is such an interesting starting point when playing around with it.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. You're not going for is he right or wrong? You're going for, oh my gosh, This is a conscious way of thinking. This is, yeah, this takes you into a potential journey of thinking on your own. It's fascinating.
Now, for people who haven't read your first book, it's such an it feels, your experience of a stroke reminded me actually of Richard Feynman when he wrote about the death of his first wife, where he was able to detach himself. He was both emotionally attached to the experience, and yet he was also observing these things that were going on. And you had this remarkable experience, and you write about it very beautifully and intriguingly, really, of the fact that you were observing your brain in a period of incredible jeopardy. And the way you write about it, it also feels like, because of some of the parts of it that closed down early on, you were able to have a level of cool detachment. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I had the fear center in my left brain that would have freaked me out. That was gone. That was actually where the hemorrhage was happening. And so my whole left, all the skill set of the left brain, which is a group of cells that defines the boundaries of where I begin and end. So I know that this is my face, but these are not me. And I know that because I got a group of cells that defines a holographic image for me of me. That went offline. So in the absence of that, I had no boundaries. I felt as big as the universe. I'm atoms and molecules and energy and space and motion, as is everything around me. So I became completely expanded and open. And then I lost the two language centers, one for the ability to create sound, dog is a sound, and then the ability to place meaning on that sound. So I lost all language. I lost the linearity of time, because this is a machine that has a past and projects into a future. And the emotional system is fear from my past and a fear of the unknown. So, and it's also the anxiety of I don't feel safe, and I'm basing that based on a linearity of time. So I wiped out all of that. And as a neuroanatomist, I mean, I was teaching neuroanatomy in the head and neck course of the School of Dental Medicine for years. So I think cellularly, I think in circuitry. So when something bizarre happened, like I no longer could define the boundaries of myself, I knew which cells were offline. And because I think in circuits, then when I got into the shower and I turned on the water and it exploded, I mean, the volume exploded. I immediately went to visualize, because my right brain's still working, visualize the auditory system, and that's down in the brain stem. And some fibers cross over and some fibers go up in the way that it gets processed. And I'm thinking, this is brain stem. This is a problem. This is where life and death happens. So I just watched the circuitry, circuit by circuit, go off over the course of 4 hours. And you know, I waffled in and out of being able to reconnect with reality enough to make that phone call and to get help. And you know, the TED talk was very accurate. That's what it was like, and acting it out for you so that people could actually follow with it and see this happened and then this happened and then this happened. And for me, the richness of that is, if anybody ever has any of those symptoms or problems, get help sooner rather than later, because stroke is an emergency. And if you get to the hospital sooner, then they've got substance that they can inject into you and actually bust the clot. But you got to act fast. Stroke should always be treated as an emergency.
One of the things that I find fascinating in your description of that, and it's also from people I've spoken to, like Michael Pollan recently, about the influence of hallucinogens on our brain, where there used to be the theory that hallucinogens were switching on bits of the brain that led to people getting new senses of connection. And yet it actually seems that it's doing quite the opposite, that it's switching off bits of the brain. And this then suddenly leads to, as you describe, you know, an incredible sense of a kind of oneness, and
Right.
and no longer that detachment of, I am an individual, the world is there and I
Yeah.
am here, and there's kind of a little bit of a haze between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, the way I see it is we've got these two emotional groups of cells, and most people know about the amygdala and the hippocampus, but we have two, one in each hemisphere. So we have emotion in the left brain about the past and about the future. So any information coming in about the present moment, that group of cells steps out of the consciousness of the present moment to compare to my past. Have I ever seen anything like this before? If so, give me a reason to push it away and say no to protect myself. So for example, when I was a little girl, there was this dog in the neighborhood, and every time I'd get on my bike and I'd ride by that house, that dog would chase me and nip at my feet. So for decades, I was afraid of dogs that looked like that because of that experience when I was 5. So that's that left emotional, give me a reason to push it away. And that is built on top of the present moment consciousness. Consciousness is right here, right now. Consciousness isn't in the past, it's not in the future. Consciousness is right here. If we want to come into consciousness, we meditate in the present, we pray in the present, we repeat mantra in the present, we breathe in the present. So the present is reality, but it's not the reality our left brain values. Our left brain builds this emotion that has time with a past and a future, and then we have this thinking brain that associates us in that left brain to the external world, so that the external world can gain meaning and value and becomes our reality because it has language and it's very loud. Where the right hemisphere doesn't have language, it's just the present moment experience of the present. So when we take something and it decreases the noise, if you will, of that left brain, then it opens us up into the present moment, which is a delightfully euphoric, perfect place to be.
So after your stroke, you had quite a lot. I mean, 8 years, I think you say, before full recovery. And I wondered, in terms of from that point when you were having the stroke and you were experiencing these kind of observations, then at what point in your recovery, how immediate was it that you started to get a sense of the magnitude of what you would experience and how that would inform your analysis of the human brain?
Oh, I mean, on the morning of the stroke, I was all but dead. I mean, if it had been 5 minutes more, I'd have been gone. The size of the hemorrhage in my left hemisphere over the course of 4 hours started small and then got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it wiped out all those skills. And then my euphoria in the present moment was so fantastic that I was in no hurry to get help. There was no sense of urgency. But by the time I did arrive in the hospital emergency room, I had curled up into a little fetal ball, and I felt my spirit surrender. Up to that point, it's hold on, hold on, hold on. What am I holding on to? I have no idea, my life. And then I felt myself surrender. And then within moments, they were bustling me in this emergency room and sticking me with needles and, everything, and sign here and sign here, but anyway, I signed. So they took my hand and made a jiggle. So, to cover everybody, and they saved my life. And then it was a matter of, we had no idea if I would get anything back because I was completely vegetative. I was paralyzed on the right side of my body. And I was as detached from consciousness of this world as anybody could possibly be. And so it was an 8-year journey, but it was a decision 1,000 times a day to be willing to try to endure the pain and agony of trying to pull attention to, which my brain didn't want to do, to anything in order to have something relate to something else, to have some meaning. So it was a hard job, and it did take 8 years. And I decided that I was completely recovered because I live on a boat half the year. I love the water. I was a water skier, and I actually, and water skiing actually takes a lot of power in the whole body to ski. I'm a slalomer, and I just love it. And so it takes a lot of power. And I actually got up and I was skiing again, and I realized I feel like I'm a solid again, where for 8 years I witnessed myself to be a fluid in relationship with a fluid environment, and the boundaries of where I began and end became fused again as I am now separate from you. I am now separate from that water. And if I wipe out, it's going to hurt because I'm going to hit it with this perception, not of absorption, but of just up against. And that's when I realized that was the first thing to go. I lost the boundaries of where I began and ended. And it was the last thing that I recovered 8 years later.